Hello, security pros. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on today's ESA webinar, 5 Considerations for IoT-Enabled Security and Surveillance Services. During this webinar, Safi Khan, Regional Product Marketing Director at Telit, will uncover how to overcome the top 5 pain points for IoT-enabled security and surveillance. He will discuss IoT connectivity options and how to leverage remote monitoring for your solution. I'm Hannah Boone, ESA's Marketing and Communications Manager, and I'm excited to lead this webinar today. Before we dive in, I'd like to provide some tips for those of you joining us on your first ESA webinar. First of all, welcome. You'll be muted for the duration of this session, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. If a question or comment comes to mind at any point during today's session, click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and I'll ensure we save some time for your questions with our expert today. We'll also be recording this webinar so you can re-watch the on-demand session and share it with your colleagues. Tomorrow, you'll receive an email thanking you for your attendance today with a link to the recording. If your company is a member of ESA, we thank you, and we hope you're utilizing your benefits to save, expand your team, and get connected to the ESA community. If you're not yet a member of the Electronic Security Association, check us out. ESA is the largest and longest standing association serving the pro-installed electronic security and life safety industry. Our members are integrators, dealers, monitoring centers, and even manufacturers and service providers in the space. You'd be surprised at the power ESA membership holds for your company. Get a feel for the ESA benefits, including savings on business insurance, training, customized in-house onboarding and professional development programs, peer networking groups, government advocacy programs, certifications that satisfy state licensing, and in some cases are also alternatives to NICET, all at esaweb.org. One of our membership specialists would be happy to walk you through these benefits and the application process. We at ESA realize that your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending some of that time with us today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Safi Khan. Safi has over 20 years of wireless semiconductor industry experience. He is a seasoned professional in product marketing, product management, and engineering development. Safi leads cross-functional teams to bring cutting-edge cellular, Wi-Fi, and multimedia technologies and products to market. So without further ado, Safi, you can take it away.
All right, thank you, Hannah, and hello, everyone. Hope everybody's doing great. I'm very happy to be joining you today for this very important webinar about the security and surveillance industry and how IoT and the new technologies are changing this landscape. And as the title says, we decided to focus on 5 main considerations of the subject. And namely, what is important is how to choose the right IoT technology for security use cases, because it's all about security. And in security, the main things that one can think of are surveillance cameras, for example, streaming video, or alarm panels that might have to make emergency voice calls. Secondly, how to ensure reliable connectivity, which always uses the best available signal. So sometimes you may have these equipments installed in a closet or in the attic or a garage. So if you are relying on connectivity, there may be challenges on receiving the best signal where the equipment is located. Then we will also consider options to connect these security systems with other smart devices in a home or a smart building. As you know, there's a big push for smart cities all throughout the world, energy savings, remote monitoring, basically overall analytics, and so on. So within a home or a building, or even at a larger scale in a smart facility, there are now thousands of smart devices, sensors, trackers, and for example, smart door locks, smart cameras, smart sensors, um, all sorts of equipment. So which is the right technology and how do you connect? And when does it make sense to use Wi-Fi? When do you use cellular? When do you use some other proprietary technology or wire technology for that matter? So we will look at that. Then we will look at how to monitor the security system status remotely to make sure that it is operational. And this is where things like cloud connectivity comes into play, as to having a dashboard in a central monitoring location where all of the security equipment can report its status seamlessly, easily through connectivity. And of course, last but not least, we will look at the importance of protecting the security system against cyber attacks, because that is the one area which works against security, which is basically hackers trying to get into the system which are not authorized. So we will also look at those things. Now, I'll get started on sharing the content, and as I go, I will explain some of these aspects that we touched on, which are the five key points that we will keep in mind throughout this presentation today. So as you can see, this smart IoT ecosystem is definitely growing really very, very rapidly. Billions of devices are being connected, and with new technologies coming online like 5G and Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, many of these devices will be connected to the internet by the year 2025. And Telit as a company is right in the heart of IoT, M2M, industrial, enterprise, consumer. So anything IoT, connectivity, managing devices at scale, that's where Telit is right in the front, in the leadership position. So basically what it means is every second there is basically a new device coming online. Our products and solutions at a very high level consist of hardware modules. These are LGA type modules, as well as M.2 data cards. And so a wide range of communication modules spanning lots of technologies. So cellular, all the way from narrowband, LPWA, which is Cat-M and NB-IoT, to Cat1 and Cat4, which are basically bread and butter for alarm panels, for example. Then moving up a little higher, we have Cat6, Cat12, Cat18. These are higher speed devices. And then we have broadband modules like M.2 modules for Cat18 and 5G. These could be used in gateways that connect other devices to them. And then we also have a portfolio of Wi-Fi Bluetooth modules and GNSS modules and smart modules. So we have a whole range that covers the new different technologies. Then the middle one is connectivity. So some of you may or may not know, we are a global connectivity provider as well. Telit is an MVNO, mobile virtual network operator. And in fact, we have a very large virtual network. It's called Telit Next. So you can actually buy a Telit connectivity SIM, which basically is a global SIM. So we have contracts with hundreds of operators worldwide. And so we provide wholesale connectivity at very competitive rates. But the main advantage is that when it's bundled with our modules, we can take care of the most important aspect, which is securing the authentication, because we can program the keys, the authentication keys at the time of manufacture of the modules. And last but not least, we have the software and platforms. We have a platform called One Edge, and we have many software packages like AppZone and SimWise and DeviceWise. All of these are basically enablement pieces to let the modules become easy to manage, easy to secure, and easy to deploy in terms of remotely turning on like a dormant SIM through a portal, and also easily remotely changing the profiles the SIMs inside the module. So some of the examples where we have enabled commercial products are shown here. And as you can see, a smart home with an app would have sensors inside that can be remotely controlled. And you have a camera on the picture. You have the central remote monitoring station shown here, and then a kind of a portfolio of smart home devices. So basically, Telit can offer solutions for the whole ecosystem. For example, for a smart home, including appliances, monitoring, security and safety, even entertainment devices, and utilities management with smart meters, and so on. So basically, our technology and our software platform and connectivity play a role in all of these aspects. So we'll start getting a little bit more into, what is massive IoT and what are the business models for security management. So, you have many different technologies available, and LTE-M or NB-IoT, which is on the left side, this is basically low power, low capability, so the data rate is low. However, these are useful for low-cost sensors or control devices. And so, for example, OEMs can embed this technology in the Windows system themselves, and you get integrated sensors, actuators. You could have blinds that are powered electronically going up and down, or you can control the darkness. And then you can also integrate vibration sensors for security and so on. So the future would look like embedded sensors making their way into the supply chain at the place of manufacture rather than an aftermarket installation. And that's how also happening in solar. So that's also happening in all of the aspects of the smart home. And then moving to the middle, you can, once you have this capability, then you can use an app on your phone or your laptop or your tablet to control these smart devices. And also all of the data can be automatically available through the cloud. And so there's lots of benefits where even if you're not at home, you can essentially see what is happening at the building remotely, and also provide the aspect of security when it comes to alarm and monitoring. And then on the right, you basically now can actually envision a full home security system. So basically, you can have now online purchase and do it yourself. Lots of those are popping up as a new model, especially millennials who like to do things themselves, maybe living in an apartment, will order a kit and just do it all themselves. And now, because of the ease of connectivity, they can basically have a wall unit which is connected cellular wise or through Wi-Fi. So they can basically control and monitor their home when they're away. And so this is basically becoming more mainstream, and more adoption is happening because the price points are coming down. There's lots of competition. And so this is the new wave, breaking the traditional method of the ADT, for example, where the building has to be, you need to have an installation appointment and someone has to come to your home and install everything. So that was the old model, and then the new model is do it yourself. Both of them are still very big and available, and depending on the use case, both of them offer a good value. Now, in terms of market dynamics and the catalysts, basically, we saw the COVID-19 pandemic really increased the need for connectivity and also remote technologically having remote access to workforce and education for schools and transportation or any kind of industry, medical basically smart everything IoT exploded with the coming of COVID-19. And even when the pandemic is behind us, it's the trend has basically continued, and new trends have emerged. And those trends are also transferring into Industry 4.0, which was chugging along, but I think it got a boost when people were, out of necessity, inventing new ways of remote management. And so now organizations are automating as much as they can. The digital transformation is happening everywhere in manufacturing and factories, in transportation, logistics, everywhere. And also, the level of security awareness is on the rise, because cameras are now becoming more easily connected to the cloud. And you have seen the explosion of videos coming from the Ring doorbell or any of these smart doorbells that are at the front door. And you can now, with AI and computer vision, coupled with the cameras and coupled with connectivity, gives the user a very powerful enablement, where any kind of motion detected comes up as an alert on your smartphone, which is always with you. And so you can always see if, for example, a delivery person came to your front door, or if an animal walked by, or in the case of security, if a burglar or some unwanted event is happening, you can be alerted, as well as take the appropriate action. Some numbers in terms of the market size. Obviously, as I said earlier, the IoT market is very big, and there's basically millions of monitored alarm systems. And again, this is the traditional alarm monitoring system through a central alarm monitoring warehouse. And in Europe, there's 16 million active, and in the US and Canada, it's double that. So the total market is pretty big. And you can see more data here for Europe and North America, rest of the world. Then on the right, you can see basically how it breaks down in terms of the different market segments. So security services, right? This is the recurring monthly service revenue. And then there are the systems themselves being sold. And then home and small business security systems. These are for more for homes. And also then cash handling. So all of this basically data is pointing to a growing trend in terms of this market. It's pretty healthy. Again, more market data here. It's basically, the vertical is billions of dollars. So you can see that it is reaching about 80 to 90 billion dollars by 2025, which is not too far away. So in the next 3 years, you can see very healthy growth, even in the worst case scenario. And even with the best case scenario after the COVID-19 impact, which slowed down things, but because it also kickstarted some of the trends, the general trend is still upwards. Let's talk a little bit about what is really happening in terms of the historical shift in the smart buildings. And here the graph is basically showing a timeline of how things are really becoming more optimized, more focused, and what other capabilities were getting added as time went on. And so the big focus in the beginning was energy management with sensors, monitor the usage in a building, look at the temperature when it's not occupied. And then came cameras and sensors that could actually look at the amount of crowd. So like I said, with computer vision and AI, you could infer how many people does the camera see. And so that gave them an extra level of like how much is the building occupied. Then you can also have wearables on the users, and you can collect that data to see if the social distancing was being maintained. And a lot of big companies developed specific apps to be able to track COVID-19 spread and see if the social distancing is being maintained. And there can be more usages of that capability. And then, of course, as people say, data is the currency in the IoT market. So the data utilization also increased dramatically because of the big data and cloud and machine learning. So all of these sensors and all of these devices are sending data to the cloud, and now you can basically analyze it in servers with high performance and do some predictive analytics. You can analyze usage, you can predict faults, and also be better prepared for disasters or emergencies. And of course, then all of this culminates into basically some kind of economic benefit. And so you end up having this data that you can analyze in the previous step to then make decisions about where to invest and how to control the cost or reduce the cost and optimize. So all of this technology is basically going to allow enterprises to run more efficient systems and services and be able to have more visibility. And of course, we have to keep in mind the concerns of privacy, and has to be taken into account, especially when you have cameras, that the facial detection, you have enough checks in place to allow the system to monitor how many people are there, but to not identify the people themselves. So that trade-off and that risk is always there, but more conscious effort is needed to make that more ethical. So yeah, surveillance, as I was talking about it, is a very big aspect of security. This gives you the eyes and ears remotely to see and hear what is happening. And also now in the more modern equipment, you can actually talk back. So if you have seen some cases, some of the equipment where the owner can talk back is a good preventative measure of scaring away possible burglars when they know that they're being monitored, and actually there's an active voice coming out of the camera. So all of those things are important in terms of new capability being added. Now, what are the challenges? Of course, data range, battery life, coexistence in a crowded environment. And by that, what I mean is, it's much easier to install a battery operated camera on the outside of a home, for example, because you don't have to run the wires to it to power it up. And of course, then if it's a smart camera and it's on battery, you obviously want the technology to be suitable to have those batteries last a very long time, so that you don't have to change them that frequently. The second thing is data range. So again, a home Wi-Fi system may not be able to reach the outside of a home, for example, in the backyard or the garage. And so you need to make sure that your connectivity is a good signal at the edge of your coverage. And then, of course, there is interference from one device to the other. So you also have to look at the coexistence. So, that's where I'll try to shift a little bit to some of the more technical aspects of technologies where, the cellular, for example, in IoT has a schism where you have the upper part of this slide where it's showing more the consumer enterprise focused, higher data speeds, LTE advanced, and 5G. And then the lower side is more focused on IoT sensors, low cost, smaller size, reduced power, and lower data speed. So those are basically, like I said, LTE Cat NB, so narrow band, and then Cat M1, which is a machine-to-machine communication, and then Cat 4 and Cat 1, which is basically about 50 to 150 megabits per second. Those are what we call IoT devices. And then the higher end is LTE Cat 6 to Cat 12, which is about 300 to 600 megabits per second. And then the last two here, the LTE Cat 16, 18, those are gigabit LTE. And then 5G, basically broadband, is very high speed. So you're talking multi-gigabits, like 2-3 gigabits per second downlink speeds. So all of this is the current generation. And then there is also the notion of the 5G RedCap, which is in the middle. This is a new technology that will be coming out in the market in 2024-25 timeframe. And this is essentially the 5G equivalent of the Cat 4 LTE replacement. And RedCap stands for reduced capability. So the initial deployments of 5G are very, very high performance and high-end mobile broadband, but they are also bringing it down to the lower LTE categories and have a pure 5G equivalent of that. So from a evolution perspective in the low end, so if I go back here, the lower side of these things, that's what this next slide is. And if you look at the data rates I was quoting, you can see how they are evolving from kilobits per second down here in the narrowband sensors, all the way up to basically 150 megabits per second downlink for a Cat 4 device. And as you can see, the usage is varying. You can see gas meters, water meters, smoke detectors, smart lighting, bike sharing, etc., asset tracking. So if you don't need to send huge amounts of data and you just need a good connectivity where every once in a while you send a status of a meter, or for example, a smoke detector just has to send the health of the air around it. So you can get away with a low power, low cost device such as this Cat NB device. Then if you move up to Cat M, this is basically higher speed. So you have 1 megabits per second speed, but it's still narrow band. Now this you can use in electricity meters, more sensors, more telematics. You can do more mobility, industrial monitoring, which includes tank monitoring and other things, parking meters and healthcare activity trackers, etc. So this basically is moving up. And then Cat 1 bis and Cat 1, these two, the next two are basically really the bread and butter for alarm panels, because they also include voice, which is VoLTE, voice over LTE, as well as circuit switch to voice fallback to 3G. Now that the 3G is completely sunset in the US, more and more reliance on VoLTE is happening. And so if you have an alarm panel in your home by a company, for example, like ADT, they are most likely using a LTE Cat 1 device, which is cellular connected, always connected as, so the old, they used to show in the movies where the burglar would cut the phone wires to the house before entering. Now with a wireless connection, especially maybe located in the attic, they don't have a way to cut off your alarm system from reaching the monitoring center. So this is really the main use for security panels in the security industry. And then of course there's a Cat 4, a higher speed variant of that, which has got more capability in terms of uplink and downlink. Both of them are faster than Cat 1. And this is used more in the gateways where you can actually aggregate data from, for example, window sensors and door sensors in a home and other camera feeds, maybe low resolution camera feeds, video surveillance, and get that aggregated and sent over the cloud. And then finally, RedCap from 5G will basically be a 5G equivalent of Cat 4. Similarly, now switching to the broadband side of things on the higher end, we see Cat 6 from 300 megabits to 600 megabits. These are basically now the new frontier for basically mid and low end devices, where you have enterprise routers or gateways, data center appliances, and so on. And some of these can be used also for security purposes, because when you are streaming camera that is higher and higher resolution, obviously you want clearer picture and higher frame rates. So you can see that the uplink becomes more and more important. So for if you have multiple camera streams and you want to send them back to the base station or back to the cloud, what really matters is your uplink, which is this UL, because downlink could be as fast as possible, but the camera can only, it's limited by how fast your uplink is. And so for camera devices, especially high resolution or multiple camera streams, you want to look at Cat 6 and Cat 12 type of devices, or Cat 18 devices, where once you get 150 megabits uplink, you can get pretty decent camera streaming. Now, of course, if you really want 4K or very, very high resolution cameras, then you have to make the switch to 5G broadband. And 5G broadband basically in millimeter wave is actually 1.5 gigabits uplink. And also in sub-6, it's still pretty decent. You get a big boost going from 150 to 500 megabits per second uplink. Now, with this much bandwidth in the uplink, you really have a very good chance of being able to deploy a remote connected camera using cellular and deploy it at any site where there is cellular coverage. And so I think for security aspect, this is very important. And then, of course, this keeps evolving over time with newer products coming down the line with the release 16 of the 3GPP standard. A few more aspects on why cellular IoT for smart surveillance. So, of course, one can argue that, okay, Wi-Fi is also fast enough. Why can't I use Wi-Fi or wired connectivity? So again, cellular, for example, in the wireless space is at the forefront of security standards and the protocol implementations. What I mean is, you have the SIM authentication. So with a cellular IoT device, you have to have a authenticated SIM, which basically can lock the device to only the authorized use. And they are provisioned with a unique identity injected at manufacturing, which is the encryption keys. And you cannot move it from module to module. And there's lots of benefits listed here. But basically, the overall message is that this is a very mature, proven technology in terms of securing the device. Of course, the hybrid approach from Telit will give you the option to use cellular mainly for basically the gateway and some of the cameras, but you can also bring in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth devices, which can connect to the gateway over Wi-Fi, and then the gateway connects to the cloud, either through the wired broadband connection, but also more and more through the wireless connection. And of course, you can do positioning, which is not very relevant to security, but still nonetheless, it's there if it's needed, especially if some mobile asset is being tracked for security purposes, then you want to get accurate GNSS location coordinates periodically. And cellular IoT, like I said, this is the lower end of the data rates. So yeah, Telit, like I said, we have lots of capability in this industry vertical, which I already kind of covered, but it's also presented here nicely, where you have a global cellular ecosystem. And it's basically disrupting the connectivity in IoT worldwide, because you have affordable data plans, you have remote cloud connectivity, so cloud connected core network. So now the network looks more and more like, you open a web page and you can see the health of all your devices that are deployed, especially from a service provider perspective. Roaming is becoming easier. You can take a single SKU and ship it worldwide. You can have global SKUs, which we have. You have embedded eSIMs, iSIMs. So basically, you don't even have to have a physical SIM. You can actually have the SIM embedded inside the module, and you can remotely provision it and activate it in a very secure manner. So there is no third party that's touching the the product as it goes from factory to the customer. And so basically, this M&O aspect, it really completes the end-to-end offering. And the overall ecosystem, like I was saying in the previous slide, is again consists of basically these four aspects shown here. You have the edge hardware, so those are the modules and data cards that we offer, coupled with the end device sensors and actuators. So, you know, someone brings the camera or a sensor, we bring the connectivity part of it, and even run an application natively on our module. And then we can provide the wide area network connectivity. So a SIM card with a data plan, which is ideally optimized for IoT usage. And then we have the software platform that basically can allow device management, operation like O&M, operation and management, and then basically firmware updates, secure boot, over-the-air updates for maintenance releases or critical bug fixes. Or let's say someone discovers a security hole and you have to quickly send a patch. So you can use this software and platform to do a batch update over the air of all the devices. So there is, you know, it minimizes the risk of exposure when a cyber attack or a security vulnerability is discovered. Last but not least, we do have applications and services which are running on top of the middleware, where you can basically have high-level applications in the cloud, which can essentially analyze the data, take some triggers or alarms and actions on the data. So, you know, you can say that if such and such happens, take such and such action and automate the whole system. And so you can basically manage the security data center enterprise system with complete automation, where alarms and triggers are automatically built into the system. And this is all possible because all the way back to the sensor level and the module level, the logging of the data of the module is available all the way to the end cloud. And so that's what makes this unique in that sense. So basically, those are the things that I wanted to talk about. And again, I hope I summarized how we can choose the right IoT technology for the security use cases, how to ensure the reliable connectivity, that is, you know, always choosing the best signal, how to basically connect the security system with other smart devices in your home or building, and, you know, how the monitoring and you know, remote management is made operational through some of the aspects of a security ecosystem, and then protecting the security system against the cyber attacks. And, you know, I kind of covered it a little bit, but I can say a few more things about it if we have time left over. But I do want to end here so that, you know, we have enough time for any kind of Q&A. I know I have been speaking throughout this initial part of the webinar, but we definitely wanted to have time for me to open the floor to any questions that anybody will have. And before I jump to the questions, this barcode, I think you can scan with your phone to basically set up any kind of an appointment with IoT experts at Telit. We can help you get started today, or just answer any questions that you may have. And also this can take you to some of the resources that we have on our website. You can go to telit.com and also look at some of the assets that we have developed. So hopefully this was useful for all of you. And so now I think, Hannah, you can open it up to questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Safi, for that presentation. It looks like we do have a few questions in here, but if any of our attendees think of anything, feel free to click the Q&A icon and submit them. We have about 15 minutes here for questions, so we'll try and get to all of them. If not, feel free to reach out to Safi with that Q icon there. All right, so first question that I have here is how will RedCap replace LTE for the security industry?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So as I said, RedCap, which means reduced capability, is a new technology in the 3GPP standard. And right now, RedCap is part of 3GPP release 17. So release 17 of the 3GPP standard is just now getting finalized, but the industry group has been working on it for the last 2 years. So from a product perspective, I think that the chipset vendors have to build new chipsets with RedCap capability, and then module vendors like Telit are going to bring out modules based on RedCap, and then finally it can go into the end devices. Now, how does it compare to LTE? So as I showed before, RedCap is essentially the equivalent of LTE Cat 4. But LTE Cat 4 will be around for a very long time. So the transition to RedCap is going to be slow. Products will actually come out maybe 2024, 25 timeframe. But mass adoption and the capability to use RedCap in a security setting is still quite a few years away. The main reason for that is that RedCap is a 5G only technology. So it does not have LTE as a backup where you can basically run LTE or RedCap. So if someone wants a cost optimized RedCap device that will have the 5G RedCap, they have to wait for the networks in, let's say, North America as well as worldwide to evolve to a level where the 5G standalone architecture allows the RedCap device ecosystem to be just as widely deployed as the LTE ecosystem. So the Cat 4 LTE will be around for a long time. And so, yes, RedCap will eventually be more optimized than the LTE Cat 4, but the data rate is the same. Maybe the power will be lower. Let's say if there's any portable applications, battery operated, there will be advantages to using RedCap. So it's going to be a mixed transition. So both technologies will continue. LTE Cat 4 will continue, and RedCap will start growing slowly.
Great, thank you for that. Let me see what other questions we have submitted. All right, the next one I have is what are the pros and cons of using Wi-Fi versus cellular technology for security devices?
Okay. Yeah, we talked about Wi-Fi, cellular, pros and cons. So I think, one of the advantages in Wi-Fi is that you get fast uplink and downlink speeds. It's more symmetric. For example, you have devices that can do, good, decent speeds, like for camera surveillance and so on. Whereas in cellular, it's more tilted towards a faster downlink, but the uplink is slower. And as I showed, that the newer 5G devices and the higher category cellular devices have faster uplink. Now, as far as the security aspect, the Wi-Fi devices traditionally have been more susceptible to cyber attacks, mainly because the hackers like to avoid having to overcome the SIM authentication, which is in the cellular. Whereas in the Wi-Fi, it's an access point with basically some level of security in terms of the passphrase, but it's somehow it has been easier to hack than cellular because, like I said, cellular is built for enterprise security right from the ground up when they thought of the SIM card and the SIM authentication. So from a cyber security perspective, cellular is more secure than Wi-Fi. So again, if you're choosing a security device, that's one of the pros in cellular. In terms of range and coverage, again, I would say cellular has the advantage because the cellular technology was inherently built for wider coverage. So for the same number of access points, the cellular signal will reach much further out in terms of penetration in walls and through trees or obstructions. So reaching hard to reach places would be easier for cellular, and also being able to get the signal to sustain higher rates will be better for in the cellular. And again, like I said, Wi-Fi may enjoy the faster speeds, but at shorter distances. So within the home, you can use Wi-Fi, and then you can use a gateway to do the backup to cellular. And then for some devices which are further out from the gateway, you can do a cellular connection from that gateway to, for example, a connected camera.
All right, great. Thank you for that. All right, I'm pulling up another question here. Okay, the next one I have is, how do cellular modules protect against cyber attacks and security devices?
Okay, I think this is touching on the aspect that we were talking about in terms of provisioning at the factory. So again, the encryption or the security aspect of securing the module involves basically a few important steps. So we put the firmware in the module at the time of building them, because there is the module which has the modem, but also has the memory, and the firmware is stored in the memory. So what we do is we have this concept of a secure boot. So it means that the module cannot power up and boot up unless the firmware is recognized as an authentic firmware. And so only a firmware image which is signed, like electronically, digitally signed with an electronic cryptographic signature, only when that signature passes is when the process of boot up is allowed. So by design, it's very, very secure in terms of any kind of malicious hacking would try to change the firmware. And if they change the firmware, then it will fail that cryptographic signature. And so it won't boot. And so this is one way to prevent cyber attacks from compromising the security of the module. The second way that on top of that is that you can burn in non-volatile memory inside the module. You can burn the encryption keys once at the time of manufacture. And so these are, one-time programmable, OTP, and they cannot be changed after that. So basically, once you have a dormant SIM that's authenticated with this method, the only way it can be turned on is through, let's say, a remote procedure that only recognizes the secure keys that are available on the other end. And so using a platform like OneEdge from Telit, we can remotely activate dormant SIM out in the field. So the customers have a powerful dashboard from which they can easily manage and operate their SIM cards in the devices.
Great. Okay, so it looks like that's all the questions that I have submitted so far. We still have around 10 minutes available. So Safi, I'll leave it up to you on whether or not we want to wait a few minutes to see if any more questions get submitted, or if there's anything else you'd like to go over with this time. Or if you'd like, we can close it out right now and just direct everyone to contact you directly.
I think we can close. If there were any questions, we would have received them. So they have the barcode. And so if anybody has any other questions they'd like to maybe ask them privately, please go ahead and send us the question.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks everyone for attending today. And just like Safi said, feel free to scan that QR code to schedule a meeting to speak with him directly. And if you're an ESA member, we thank you for your membership. And if you're not and interested in learning more, feel free to visit our website at esaweb.org and schedule a discovery call. We'd love to talk to you, and have a great rest of your day, security pros.